listening to the Recovered Life Show.
Welcome back to the Recovered Life Show. I am pleased to be joined today by our friend, Gabri Angelo, who is a recovering out loud social media influencer and has been a guest on the show before, and so thrilled to have her back. How you doing, Gabri?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be back on the show.
I am really excited to have you. You know, we always have really good conversations, and what I really love about you is that you really shine a light on early recovery, right? You have a couple of years now, and we've watched you through being on the Recovered Life Show go through this journey. And we were having this conversation on the phone about the whole honeymoon period being sober, right? And about how fun that is when you first realize that, wow, I'm going to be able to regain and stay sober. But also that those feelings sometimes kind of end, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes expectations, kill with sobriety. And so for me, I didn't know there was a honeymoon phase. I was just like, oh, this is how it's going to be always. Excuse my dog. And so for me, when, it ended and I had to figure out, okay, like I've been surviving being sober, but how do I really thrive? Like I'm actually, not thriving the way I should. It really threw me for a loop and really like discouraged me, honestly. And so for me, the biggest advice is to, as hard as this is, and nobody likes to do this, is to really sit and validate those negative feelings. For me, I didn't do that. And so I felt super, super guilty. I was like, I've been given this like amazing chance to kind of, rewrite, my life and be sober. And so I kind of felt like, so many people would love to be in the position that I'm in. And so why do I feel these negative feelings? And so when I was judging them, I actually, wasn't processing them and, letting go of them. So that is definitely the first thing I would say is you are absolutely valid in feeling that. I think anybody that's going through this has felt that at certain like periods of time, super valid. So don't beat yourself up for it.
Yeah. I mean, and let's be honest that just the first part of sobriety, especially the first couple of months, right? I would say even the first year is just so shocked that you're sober and so grateful for the fact that you're not, you're not at death's door, right? You're not waking up. The ramifications start to go away a little bit. You start to be able to repair things. And then it starts to get a little bit more real, either after 6 months to a year, right? And that's the thing that we were talking about that I think it's really great to have a conversation about, because I think a lot of people, they start to beat themselves up and they're like, well, I should be more grateful. And maybe sometimes they're a little bit still sad that they're not drinking. They kind of wake up out of this honeymoon period, right? Can you describe that a little bit? Those feelings of like waking up and it's like, oh, I really can't go there and I can't drink ever again.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for me, I got sober, like my first year sober really was in the pandemic, like in the heat of the pandemic. So I didn't have those temptations of, oh, I'm seeing people go out. Nobody was out. Everybody was home. And so for me, after, that year mark and things started to open up and I saw, other people my age going out and getting invited to go out and things like that. I would go out because I was like, I'm not going to, limit myself, obviously set boundaries when going out. But I was like, man, like, I wish I could do that. I wish I didn't have to think so critically and so hard about every decision, like, I make and how it's going to affect my mental health. And I kind of was jealous of the people around me that seemed to be able to be so carefree and kind of, just navigate the world and especially the social sphere with ease. And so, yeah, it was definitely hard. It was very devastating. And like I said, I started to judge myself. I feel like a lot of people get really stuck with this, like all or nothing thinking. Two like opposing things can be true at once. And once I realized that kind of changed everything for me.
Yeah.
So when I realized like, okay, in this situation, I could acknowledge like, I'm 23, kind of stinks that I just can't go out and, go to the club and drink with my friends, while also acknowledging that if I did indulge in that and I did drink, it would be the worst downhill spiral ever.
Exactly. And,
Right.
some of it too, we were talking about how funny it is, kind of how our minds play tricks on us.
Mm-hmm.
And what's so interesting about recovery and about, going through recovery year after year is that even you maybe see those people going out and, you're younger, so people are going out and doing that. And
Yeah.
with COVID for 2 years, people have been basically locked down, right? So you haven't really had that situation, but you see it and you're like, wow, maybe that would be fun to go do it. But really, you weren't having fun when you were doing that, right? So
No.
it's not going to be fun, but it's
Right.
just the fact that you feel that you're losing something that you don't really want.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird how our minds play tricks on us.
Yeah. Sorry about my dog, he's squeaking. But I feel like when something, you haven't indulged in something for a bit, and you haven't been around that lifestyle in a bit, you kind of romanticize, how things used to be. You remember in your mind, oh, when I was drinking, I was doing all of this crazy stuff and it was fun. That wasn't actually the case. If I could rewind time and talk to my past self and be like, why do you remember it this way? This was horrible. But I think we kind of all get in that trap. We love to, remember the good, and we kind of forget the bad. I'm like, oh, maybe, this wouldn't be so bad. But I think we all kind of get into that loop. So,
but 6 months into it, let's say you would have maybe fallen for that, right? If it was strong enough, or you would have been led down that road. Well, maybe I can just go, and, you would have maybe put yourself in a bad situation. But now, after you're in it a year plus, it's not, you realize that that's just self-talk, right? That's just talk coming at you. It's not even real necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm honestly like mourning something that actually was never there to mourn, I feel. I'm mourning like the idealized version of my past drinking self that wasn't actually there. And while I can say that and be like, that was the idealized, it wasn't real, the feelings that I have are still very real. And so I try to, not judge myself for that and still validate my feelings and be yeah, like give myself, some room to mourn that. Because I feel like if you don't acknowledge that, you're not going to actually have sustainable sobriety. You're just going to be, fighting against that. And it's going to be this like combative thing instead of, just focusing on your path of healing. So,
yeah. And one of the things I love about what you do in social media, you're always on TikTok and Instagram, and you're expressing what you're feeling, but you're also expressing a solution as well. And, I think this whole recovering out loud thing too makes it a little different because there is more pressure, right? Like if people know that you're in recovery, sometimes you feel like, well, I have to have everything together. I have to have every answer. I have to be perfect all the time. And that's really unrealistic to put on ourselves, that somehow we have to be perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely, felt that pressure, not even just from, the people around me and people that have reached out to me and been like, oh my gosh, you're an inspiration, things like that. I felt that I put that on myself because I was so out there. I was like, oh my gosh, if I say that I'm struggling, and I'm giving people advice, I'm like, oh, well, she can't even handle, her own sobriety. Why am I going to take advice from her? When really I feel like, everybody struggles with this. And so I wanted to be as real as possible because, everybody feels this way, even the public figures that may not always talk about the struggle is always there. And so if I'm going to be open about sobriety, I'm going to be open about all parts of it. And so that's kind of just, why I'm as open as I am.
And I think a lot of recovery resources are really centered around people who are coming into recovery, right? And I think what's very powerful about what you said, and I'd like to dive into this a little bit, is that when people that are in recovery express what's going on with them, it's really a relief to other people because many people feel this way, right? Many people feel like, hey, it's just not going well for me this week. Right. But they don't want to express it because they don't want to say, well, I'm in recovery. Everything should be perfect. I'm so lucky I didn't die. I'm so lucky that I'm not, didn't have any major ramifications. I'm here. Right. And by not expressing it, I think it hurts people's recovery and the people around you in your group. Right. And what's been what has been your experience with Recovering Out Loud on TikTok and expressing that? Do you find that more people are like, wow, I feel that way too?
Yes, I think there's definitely a generational difference. I found that a lot of younger people, like if you look at anybody my age and their TikTok, like extremely personal stuff, jokes about things that, past generations may have been like, you don't joke about that, or you don't talk about that. So, my generation has been very perceptive. I have found a little bit of a disconnect. In the older generation, it's kind of like, well, you need to be grateful for, your sobriety and things like that. But I'm kind of like, if we all are feeling this, why isn't this talked about? And it just becomes this taboo, and it kind of just festers. And how can you actually lean on and get support from your, sober community if you don't share your whole sober experience with them? I feel like you said, you're missing a huge chunk if you're not talking about, the struggle. If there was no struggle, there would be no need for a sober community to lean on. Like,
yeah. And if somebody's listening, to this too, Gabri, they might be saying, oh, wow, second year, third year, whatever, sobriety is going to be very, very difficult. But you're not really saying that. You're just saying that sometimes you hit this impasse where kind of that pink cloud, that honeymoon period's over. And that's when the real recovery begins, right?
Yeah.
How did you get out of, you have these feelings, you stay in it for a little bit. What tools did you apply to get out of that and kind of back on track or to a new plateau?
Yeah. Before I get into that, I do just want to say, like, all of this stuff comes in waves. So, I'll apply a certain, technique or a therapy that I've learned, and it does help, but things do come in waves. So I try not to, judge myself when it comes back. And I'm like, wait, I just worked on this. But the best thing for me is when I learned about dialectical behavioral therapy. Like I talked about it a little bit earlier, where, two opposing things could be true at once. I feel like I am very much an all or nothing person by nature. It's like I'm having the best time of my life, or this is trash. So when I started to, have a rough time in my sobriety, all or nothing, I'm like, is this trash? Huh? Like, I don't think it is, but that's kind of my feeling. And so being able to, do the both and type thinking to kind of get through it really helped. Also too, I said this in my other episodes with you, and I'll say it again, healthy distractions. For me, I think a reason why I did drink is because I was craving some sort of, recklessness or something like that. And so I try to still get that feeling, but in a controlled and healthy way. Like, I love to get tattooed. I love to, work out, be super physical. I try to, not change who I am at my core, but just kind of alter, some of the things that I do so that I stay on like a healthy path.
Yeah, I think the key is what you just said, which is very important to anybody who's listening to this that might be going through a rough time. Look, we just wrapped up the holidays. We're in 2022 and early, and people are feeling, wow, maybe my life isn't where I want it to be in sobriety, right? But what I loved about you said is that these feelings pass. And I think that this is a really big point that you make, is that, you might feel bad for a while, but if you keep working the tools and you keep talking to people and you keep doing the deal and you keep exploring, eventually that it passes and something else comes in.
Absolutely. Like, I love, as cliche as this is, I love the analogy of like the wave. Like, it comes on super strong and you honestly feel like you are never going to get past this feeling. You're like, I'll always feel this way. But then as soon as it comes, it crashes down. You're like, oh, like, that feeling, that's gone and I'm okay. And sometimes for me too, I kind of like to journal when I feel both ways. Kind of like, when I'm feeling better, I kind of journal to myself being like, Gabri, you felt this way before. You're going to feel it again, but you're okay. And it's going to pass because I was there. So that also does like really help me too.
That's great. And, just being able to see those patterns and to be able to stop your thinking, I think that's just such a valuable lesson to anyone that's new in recovery. Gabri, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I always love being on the show.